There are a lot of thorny issues on the table in terms of any possible peace deal, ceasefire, or political solution to the Ukraine-Russia conflict. But the most immediate one is the one you just described, the presence of troops on which part of the territory and who in what way to control which part of the territory under military conflict. The gap, as you just described, is indeed big. Russia has stood up with its stance that Ukraine's troops need to vacate from all the eastern four provinces, including Crimea. And also in the Istanbul meeting last week, some sources even indicated Russia hinted that it's interested or its demands additional territories that are not under Russian control right now as a potential buffer zone in the future, including, for example, the region of Kharkov, Sumy, etc. On the other hand, the Ukraine hasn't given up on that. It doesn't want to give up its sovereign territorial claim for at least the eastern four provinces. So the gap is indeed big. It's big enough to shut out any possible peace deal or stop any further future face-to-face negotiation between the two sides.
Well, Professor, let's talk a little bit more about Trump's stance on this. He says if there is no deal, he will back away. Let's take a listen first.
I think something's going to happen. And if it doesn't, I'd just back away and they're going to have to keep going. Again, this was a European situation. It should have remained a European situation.
Well, Professor, I believe you still vividly recall Trump's campaign promise to end the Ukraine conflict in 24 hours. Now he just said this, and he will back away in that situation. What caused this U-turn?
I think the current Trump administration is having a little bit difficult time, or feels increasingly frustrated because their expected mediator's role between Russia and Ukraine hasn't worked out as expected, and also the campaign promise Trump did about ending the conflict certain days after his inauguration doesn't materialize. So on the one hand, Trump himself and also other top U.S. officials are modifying their campaign promise to indicate the promise is not to reach a full-scale ceasefire in its full scale. Rather, the promise is to start some political negotiation, and so that's a modification. But on the other hand, the Trump administration is still intensifying the possibility of withdrawing as a threat to both Ukraine and Russia. Right? But if the prospects of a mediated negotiation or at least a partial ceasefire is completely out of reach, if that becomes the reality, I think Trump himself, his administration is willing to shrug off to say, well, this is a European issue. We've done our job. We've tried. But if nothing is going to be achieved in a reasonable time, this is your issue. Go ahead and sort it out by yourself. We are out. I think that possibility is there, and looks like the probability of a U.S. withdrawal is increasing.
Right, and Donald Trump just said that it's a European issue and he'll keep it European. And European leaders do have a sort of agreement, according to German Chancellor Merz. He said European leaders have agreed to increase pressure on Russia through sanctions. What is EU's role in this conflict?
Relative to United States, obviously Europe in general, EU in particular feels more of a so-called existential threat from Russia. And that's why after the consensus on a conditional 30-day ceasefire demand for Russia between US and Europe, de facto has broken after the Istanbul meeting. The US indicates certain interest to back off, right, to leave it to the Europeans. But the EU is not going to back up anytime soon. as the new Chancellor, the German Chancellor Merkel's comments indicate, as well as some of the recent diplomatic efforts by the so-called coalition of the willing between UK, France, Germany, Poland, together with Ukraine. We see intensified efforts to stood up to these new situation and also possible reduce the U.S. Support, and then to continue EU's support for Ukraine to in its military conflict with Russia. And then the major policy drive in that direction is the continued economic sanction with extended scale and also more targeted objects of sanction against Russia. And that's what EU is trying to push through the 17th sanctions. And maybe there are 18th or 19th sanctions to follow up.